New Zealand Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern shocks the world by announcing her surprise resignation from office. NATO, US and Germany are set to discuss Ukraine's needs for more weapons. The alliance's Secretary General said the only way to a negotiated peace is to give Ukraine support. The IAEA has established a permanent mission at the Chernobyl nuclear site in an effort to supervise nuclear safety during the conflict in Ukraine.
The European Commission will announce plans to address the shortage of medicines in March this year.
New Zealand Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern has announced her resignation. She had been expected to set an election date, which she did for October 14th, but shocked reporters by declaring her exit from politics, all while fighting back the tears.
And so today I'm announcing that I will not be seeking re-election, and that my term as Prime Minister will conclude no later than the 7th of February. This has been the most fulfilling 5.5 years of my life, but it has also had its challenges. I know what this job takes, and I know that I no longer have enough in the tank to do it justice. It's that simple.
Ardern's leadership has impressed many domestically and globally, steering her country through its worst terror attack and the pandemic. She said she had no regrets and would like to be remembered as someone who always tried to be kind. Ukraine is in need of more weapons and more military hardware. The war-ravaged country's Western backers are to meet later this week in Germany to discuss ways to meet Ukraine's needs in its fight against Russia. NATO's Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg, speaking at the World Economic Forum in Davos on Wednesday, said the only way to a negotiated peace is to give Ukraine support.
Weapons, they are the way to peace, and that may sound like a paradox, but the only way to have a negotiated agreement is to convince President Putin that he will not win on the battlefield.
German Chancellor Olaf Scholz is key to the supply of modern Leopard 2 tanks, top of Ukraine's wish list. Scholz has veto power over any decision to send the German-made military vehicle tanks. It's now being reported he will allow their exports to Ukraine if the United States agrees to send its own tanks. At Davos, he strongly underlined Germany's support for Ukraine.
We will continue to do this as long as necessary. And whilst we are doing this and showing that the Ukrainians can rely on our support for their courageous fight, it is also clear that we will avoid that this is becoming a war between Russia and NATO.
The supply of tanks is set to be at the top of the agenda at Friday's meeting of the so-called Ukrainian contact group at Ramstein Air Base in Germany. Donors of military aid to Ukraine are meeting in Estonia today. The nuclear watchdog, the IAEA, has established a permanent mission at the Chernobyl nuclear site for the first time. The initiative is part of a new arrangement that will see experts deployed on a continuous basis to all Ukraine's power plants, in addition to Zaporizhia, where the UN organization has been present since September. IAEA chief Rafael Grossi said it was a special day.
This is my 6th visit to your country since the beginning of the war, which I believe in itself attests to the commitment of the IAEA and my own personal commitment to assist in ensuring safety, security of the entire nuclear infrastructure in Ukraine.
Chernobyl is the site of the worst civil nuclear accident in history, which took place in 1986. Russia briefly occupied the plant at the start of the invasion at the end of February. Consultations are underway on the establishment of a protection zone around the active Zaporizhia nuclear power plant in a move to prevent any possibility of a further nuclear accident during the current conflict.
The European Union is suffering from a shortage of medicines. Antibiotics like amoxicillin or medicines to relieve colds, the flu and other respiratory infections are some of the most affected, as well as paediatric treatments. The situation is considered critical in most European countries, but pharmacies and experts advise people not to stockpile. The reasons for the shortages differ, though.
And of course in the United States, where a new the main root causes which have been identified are the sharp increase in demand because of more respiratory infections, along with insufficient production capacity. As these products are authorized at national level, the Member States' competent authorities are already putting mitigation measures in place.
Some of these measures include selling the generic equivalent or a similar medicine, or in some countries even changing the way they are ingested, like converting tablets to syrup so children are able to take them more easily.
The availability of pediatric formulations is generally lower than the ordinary tablets that you and I can swallow. And again, coming back to the winter situation with infections targeting children, the pressure on the availability for pediatric formulations is higher than for the adult formulations.
According to the Medicine Shortages Index, the number of out-of-stock medicines in Ireland reached 224 this week. But what can the European Union do if the problem is worldwide?
We need diversification. Of course, it would be useful to bring back to Europe the production of some critical material, active pharmaceutical ingredient, for example, but we cannot bring back to Europe all the production of all material that we use for medicines. That is not realistic. And it also entails challenges, including, for example, the possible increase in price linked to the respect of environmental law, of labor law that we know are not necessarily respected in their countries.
In March, the European Commission will present plans to revise the EU's pharmaceutical legislation that will include stronger obligations for meeting supply.
Microsoft is set to axe 10,000 jobs in the latest cull by a tech giant. It plans to reduce its worldwide workforce by 5%. Hundreds of tech firms, including some of the sector's biggest names like Amazon and Meta, have revealed layoffs in recent weeks. Big technology companies have been forced to respond to signs of a global economic slowdown, with many having recruited tens of thousands of additional employees during the pandemic. More than 30,000 tech workers have lost their jobs this year so far.
Even after the evacuation of the German village of Lützerath in North Rhine-Westphalia's lignite mining area, the protest goes on. Euronews accompanied activists from the last generation climate movement. They glued their hands onto an access road of the open pit mine as part of a coordinated action in several places. The idea was to draw in more police officers so thus other activists could enter the open pit more easily. In other words, a diversion tactic. We want to highlight the scandal that even today in 2023 a village can be cleared to extract lignite. The early coal phase out is a farce. It'll simply burn the same amount of coal in a shorter time. One of the activists sings a verse about manning the barricades and fighting back, making a stand against continued mining of lignite in Germany. Late in the afternoon, the police arrive, bringing, of all things, frying oil. They use it to remove the glue from the activists' hands. They're then carried away and the blockade is broken. In recent months, the town of Lützerath and other open-cast mining sites in the Rhineland region have become a hotspot for the climate movement in Germany. Our correspondent said this is one of the largest lignite mines in the world and mining continues here. That's why people are taking to the streets, because they're afraid of the climate collapse arriving at some point. The activists' personal details are taken and then the police let them go. I think this can't just be how it is. You see how profit interests are defended and not our livelihoods, our democracy or the common good. The activists say they feel sadness, anger and despair, but they'll continue to protest.